Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper with some of these selection tools. So before we were talking about using the uh, the quick selection tool, and we took it to the magic wand tool. There's another tool that we can use that's also kind of fun. It's an older tool, and it's actually not in the toolbar, but it's up here under select, and it's called color range. And color range really is looking more for particular colors. So let's say in this sense, beforehand, I had made this hue saturation layer and we had like desaturated it and it was just that sign. But let's say we decided, well, you know what I'd really like to do is I like this, I just like to make the 7-Eleven, which is red, just more vibrant. So I could increase this, but then the whole sign becomes a little bit too vibrant. So it's not really functioning the way I want. So what if I instead, now I could go and I could use my quick selection tool, or I could use my magic wand tool, and the magic wand tools would probably work pretty well. But I could also use this color range tool, and I could just come over here and I could click on the sign, and you can, what I get over here is, this is my control window. I get a little, it shows you kind of a mask preview. So whatever's white is what's selected. If I hold down, I can click on the image here to see the whole image, or just look at the selection. Now the fuzziness is allows you to kind of increase the gain or the selectability of what you've clicked on. So you can, if I can increase this, you start to see the other parts of the sign and the whole image start to ramp up as I've increased this. So it usually starts around 40, which isn't bad, but sometimes a little bit of up or down is helpful. The other thing that's important for this control is you'll see these eyedropper tools, and there's a normal eyedropper tool, add a plus and a minus, so plus and subtract. So if I wanted to go back to the sign and say I clicked on the 7, but maybe if I wanted to click on this 11, because the 11's a little bit different than the top here, so I could do that. I could click here. You can see it made my selection even a little bit brighter and stronger. So I can do that, and even just decrease it a little bit down to about 40. It looks like a really nice clean selection, so I can click OK. And then I can look at this, and I can even put in my quick mask mode, which is not so great. It's not so great when it is red, so I could come here and I could change this color to say maybe green. And now I can really clearly see how good of a job I've done. And you know, there's some areas there where it might be nice to do a slightly better job. This is still pretty good. So I've made that selection. So now I could come over and I can make another hue saturation adjustment layer, or color balance. Well, let's try vibrance this time. And I could just come in here. I can increase the vibrance of this, and so you can see that shift. So you can really make that red sign a bit crisper. So there it is without it turned on, and there it is elevated. So just another selection opportunity for you. Let's go a step farther, and let's go back to this idea of working on my trees here and trying to get a good selection of these trees. Maybe I decided I wish they were just a little bit greener and not quite so yellow from the sun. How could I control that? Well, I need to make a good selection. So we might actually try the color range with them as well. And now I could come in here and click. You can see when I do that, I'm getting a pretty decent initial selection, and I need to come to the plus and I can add to this. But you'll see as I start to add to this in different places, I'm going to kind of click around. I'm getting a good selection of the trees, but the other thing that's happening is the whole sign is starting to also get quite selected. So I could maybe really make a good selection here, but part of my problem that I'm going to be tackling is for some reason that didn't make the selection happen. So let's try that one more time. Yep, and click OK. Huh. Simple color selection preview. There. Now it's good. I think it's because I was on another layer, and so it didn't actually have anything to select from. I needed to be on my layers palette. I needed to be selected on my image layer as opposed to an adjustment layer. So good to know. But you can see here when I switch this around that I've got a lot of selections all in this central part. Now I could go and I could subtract those. I could create some. I could use the quick selection tool and like hold down the option key and like subtract from these. But you can see, oops, I'm starting to mess up my selection over here. And so you could play this game of kind of going back and forth. You could use the lasso tool, which would be pretty safe, and you could come through here and just lasso out some of these selections. And that's actually another reason why the lasso tool is so nice, because you can do some pretty fast stuff pretty quickly, and that's getting me pretty close. But here's another idea. Let's start over. This time, let's use the lasso tool first. Again, make a rough selection of the trees. Just a little bit there. Hold down my plus key again so I can make my selections to add to this. I'm not gonna work on this too hard. So I want to make sure I get those. Okay, so I've got those. Now what if I go to my color range? And now it looks like, okay, I've got this nice selection again over here. Kind of got to go to some different spots. And you can see my preview of where I'm selected. It looks exactly like it did before. So you're thinking, well, what's changed? Well, let's click OK and let's see what happens. Okay, notice now I've got the selection, pretty good selection of my trees here, but I don't have any selection of most of this area because it wasn't previously selected. So only the things that were previously selected were being would color range draw from to create the final selection. So I'm going to change this back to red or maybe even a magenta. So we can really see what I've got selected here. And so this is pretty good. I need to do a little cleanup on some of these lines, these power lines here. So my selection, subtract that with my lasso tool, and you can get up in close if you need to. And the goal is just that you don't want this to take hours, right? Or like, oops, I messed up. So I need to go back, hold down the minus key. And get rid of some of that. Like that, that's pretty darn good. I can come over here and just see how things are going. I can get rid of this part. See over here, I've got a little area which may not be worth having selected. But we're pretty good here, pretty close to quite a good selection. So if I come back here, now I could just go ahead and, translate this. Now I'd like to show you something that if you're in a place where you've spent some time getting a selection, you're like, gosh, I don't want to lose this. You kind of have two options. One, you could make a quick adjustment layer, whatever it is, curves, levels, exposure, doesn't matter. You could just say, okay. And as soon as you've done that, then you have recorded this selection and you've got a pretty good feel for it. It's recorded here. Now, if you ever need to get this to become a selection again, there's some things you can do. You can have this selected, you can hold down the command key and click on it. When you click on it, it will turn the mask into a selection, okay? So that's one way to kind of save the selection. There's another way you can do that though. When the selection's active, you can actually go up to select. You can say save selection. It'll ask you which document you want to be. It'll be default to the document you're working in. And it's going to save it as a channel. Okay. But you can name it. You can say like whatever it is, tree selection number 1. You click OK. And now if you need to get back to that selection, what you do is over here in the layers panel, if you come over here, you'll see that there's 3 things listed: layers, channels, paths. So if you go to channels, now you can see that we have my tree selection mask right here. And if I want to load that as a selection, I just need to select it, and then I click on this little marching ants circle, and it turns it into a selection. So now, if I look at it, here now it's back to my selection. So it's a little fancy footwork, but the advantage of that is then you have this selection. And if at a certain point you're like, you know what, I don't need to save this as a selection, you can of course come down here and delete these, and it will be gone. So let's go back to layers, and let's take this selection just one step further. And so I'm gonna hold down my command key on this exposure adjustment layer, and I'm gonna click on it to reselect that selection. You can see it there. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up, and I'm gonna go to select, and I'm gonna go to select and mask. And that is gonna bring up this channel. Fortunately, it did not bring up my selection, which I want it to do. So let's see how I'm going to get it to do that. So I double clicked on my layer mask and says, what would you like to do? And I say I would like to enter select and mask. Seems a kind of roundabout way of doing it. I can view the properties, which is normally what pops up when I double click on a layer. Well, I got layer style there, but if I double click on my properties, you notice there's 2 parts. There's the properties where you can, like, say, change the exposure. I'm just changing the exposure of the trees here, but you can also go to the mask thumbnail, and then it will tell you information about the mask. And one of the things you can do in there is you can click on select and mask. And when you do that, you get to this, which looks the same. So I think, you know what my problem was? I forgot I have to choose the right view mode. So the view mode is right here. I have a bunch of different view modes. So if I go to overlay, that's going to show me mask out everything except the selected area. So you can see that here, or I can look at this in different ways. I can, of course, go to marching ants. I could also do onion skin. It's not very useful. Some of these will look better on others, be better on some than others. So here's like pretty good if I just want to look at the mask. I think I'll just go back probably to overlay here, because it gives me a pretty good sense of how good this is. And so I wanted to show you this because I can refine the selection a little bit more. So I can come in here, if I come in close, and you can see this, especially in here, you can see there's like outlines, and what I'm really seeing is a little bit of blue from the sky. And so if I want to try to get rid of that, what I'm going to have to do is, let's probably just zoom in here so we can see this. But over here, I have a couple choices in these global refinements. And so one of them is shift edge. So if it feels like a lot of these are just a little bit too big, I can come here and I can subtract a little bit. And what that should do is that should pull in my mask and make it a little bit smaller. So if you can see there, as I pull in, I'm getting less of that blue. compared to where I was, right? If I add to it, it's going to make it a little bit bigger, which also not what I want. I probably just want to make it a little bit smaller just to make it a better selection. The other thing I can do is I can feather it just a tad bit. And when I feather it, it'll just make the edges blend a little bit better in here. So let's zoom into this. Let's see here. Why are you not zooming? Okay, there we go. So this is zoomed in. So if I feather this, increase this maybe like to 2 pixels, just made things a little bit blurrier in there. This is a fine-tooth thing, so you can see there it was. A little bit more edges, and I've just come in a couple pixels and just softens that. It blends the very edge and makes a gradient at the very edge of the selection. Yeah, so beating a dead horse, I suppose, but here we go. And now we can click OK. And this, of course, will, that updated my mask to make it better. And now all we need to do is actually utilize this. You know, I have actually didn't do anything with this mask. What we said we were going to do, right, was maybe I could brighten it a little bit, but what I really want to do is actually change the color balance. So I'm going to make another, I'm going to go ahead and hold my command key down and click on this exposure layer so I get the selection back. I'm going to go and make another adjustment layer. I'm going to make color balance. And now I'll come in here and I'm going to take out some yellow and maybe also take out a little red. Not too much though. So hopefully you can see it's subtle, but I've taken out a little yellow from my trees. So there's before, sorry, there's before, there's after, and that is a great example of how we can use these selection tools to refine my mask and make my control of adjustment more precise.